Good afternoon. It is Saturday and it's time to look at the tropics. Thanks for clicking on to today's video. Before we continue with the video, hit that like button, share with your friends and family, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already done so, because we have got lots of things to cover here. We're talking about the winter coming up. We're talking about the current pattern, extreme record warmth versus extreme record cold. We've had a mixture of everything. We've had a real whammy of weather over the last week to 10 days. Whammy is the right word. But we certainly have had some very extreme conditions across parts of Europe. And yeah, I did a 32-minute long European outlook yesterday, looking at the prospects of the next cold spell coming up. So I do encourage you to check that out if you haven't already done so. And let's get right into the tropics. Before we get actually to the tropics, remember there is a live stream at 4 p.m. from Inverness tomorrow afternoon, so I hope you can join me for that, looking at all things global. So this is a Facebook post by our good friend Jesse Farrell, based at AccuWeather in State College, Pennsylvania, showing a collection of photographs from Francine. Francine did actually intensify from a 90 to a 100 mile per hour hurricane as it was essentially coming on shore, and it did wreak havoc in Louisiana in particular, but we did see effects in Texas to the west and Mississippi and even Alabama. Even the panhandle of Florida was seeing some wind, rain, and wave action, probably with rip currents, etc., etc. But this is the numbers presented by Jesse of the maximum wind gusts in excess of 97 miles per hour. I do think there was a wind gust on shore just over 100 miles per hour, and on one of the oil platforms, I think there was a 112 mile per hour gust recorded. Storm surge reached 4.63 meters at Waveland, Mississippi. So there you go. All the way across to the Mississippi coast, we've seen some of the biggest storm surge from Francine. Highest rainfall totals looks like Elmwood in Louisiana at just under a foot of rain recorded here, and 500,000 homes or businesses that lost power from Francine as well at its peak. So that is some of the numbers presented, like I say, by our friend Jesse Farrell. Let me just see if there's anything else. Here we go here. Top Francine wind gusts, oil rigs. This is obviously 100 to 200 feet above the surface of the Gulf of Mexico, but we did see Eugene Island 25 record a 112 mile per hour gust. East Cameron 32-1A 105. Garden Banks 97, and Magnolia oil platform recording a wind gust of 95 miles per hour. So yeah, we certainly did see significant impact, significant damage, and I think according to Fox Weather, there is the potential over $1 billion worth of damage due to Francine. So, where are we at with regards to the tropics as of this afternoon, Saturday? This is slightly pre-recorded, I must admit, so some of this information may just be out by a few hours. But we've got the remnants of Francine here, post-tropical. Notice it's not got particularly far over the last 48 hours. That is due to a big blocking area of high pressure to the north. But this system is kind of raining itself out over northern Arkansas, as you can see here. With maximum sustained winds now down to 15 miles per hour, pressure over 1,000 millibars at 1009 millibars to be exact, and moving in a southeasterly direction because this came up against that wall of high pressure, moving southeast at 6 miles per hour. We've got 3 areas of interest. We have got Tropical Storm Gordon, 40 mile per hour, sustained winds 1,006 millibars and moving in a west and northwesterly direction at 10 miles per hour. We've got a feature here, a cluster of thunderstorms over the northern portion of the Leeward Islands. There is a 0% chance over the next 48 hours of development from this. And we've also got a 10% chance of development from a feature that is attached to a stall frontal system That appears to be the story in recent times, a stalled frontal boundary either along the east coast or the south coast of the USA. We also have seen the development of Francine due to energy moving over the Yucatan Peninsula, meeting up with a feature that's attached to that tail of the frontal system. The two merged. It broke away from the main front itself, became what eventually became Category 2 Hurricane Francine, should I say, sorry, not Francis, Francine, as it moved onshore back on Wednesday evening. Looking at the prospects going forward here, let's look at the 7-day outlook from NHC. You can see here, Francine remains post-tropical for the next few days here. There's that feature there. It's actually up at 40% chance of development. What's the problem is it's actually along a frontal system. So it may become somewhat subtropical, where it's got a mixture of both baroclinic but also tropical property. You can have sometimes a system that tries to become a closed circulation here, but it still has a frontal system attached to it, or it may have a cold core. So therefore, it becomes a subtropical system. But if it can break away from the frontal system and become its own entity, it would then go from subtropical to tropical. And it looks as if it's going to be kind of in and around the southeast coast of the United States over the next several days. And it may develop into early next week if it manages to get away from the frontal system that it's attached to at the moment here. So we'll keep our eyes closely fixed on that as we move through the weekend, and particularly so into Monday and Tuesday of next week. I think that's the greatest opportunity for anything actually developing from that. Looking at Gordon here, it looks as if it goes from storm to depression back to a storm, and then it takes a bit of a turn to the north over the open North Atlantic. So I don't think there's going to be any real threat of any land area in the next week or so from Gordon. Looking at the entity that has a 0% chance over the next 7 days, there is not really anything to show about that. It looks as if that is just a feature that will continue to exist over the far eastern Caribbean and generate showers and thunderstorms on and off for the next several days. Looking at the latest IR imagery here, we do have Gordon, as you can see here, a little ball of convection here to the northwest of the Cabo Verde Islands here. We have the feature that is over the far northern portion of the Leeward Islands. You notice here that there is very little in the way of convection. We do have a blow up here at the end of the loop over the north coast of Puerto Rico, for example, but nothing really to write home about. There's the mess here, stalled out frontal system here. It doesn't look as if it's going to organize anytime soon. There's a large envelope of low pressure here, and until we can see bundling take place, this is going to remain unorganized and no actual closed circulation. So I don't anticipate anything over the next 24 to 48 hours, but it's once we see that system drifting further north, it's encountering the Gulf Stream, some fairly warm waters, low 80s and quite deep below the surface as well. There's also, this is along the shelf as well, so you've actually not got a particularly deep ocean depth there. So there's a lot of warm water almost right down to the surface. That means that if this system can break away from that frontal system and counter that kind of lack of shear, dry air, etc., we may see this feature developing, over the next early to middle portions of next week. That would probably be the time frame to look at. Looking at Gordon in particular, you notice here that on this IR imagery, we've got winds coming in from the northeast. We've also got winds on the southern flank coming in from the southwest. So it is encountering shear. You can also see at the very end of the loop that you've got this strong blow up of cold cloud tops here. Some strong thunderstorms are blowing up, but the environment is not overly conducive. Strong northeasterly winds on the north side, strong southwesterly winds on the southern side, and this is basically pulling apart them thunderstorms. and you can actually see a little bit of a low-level circulation centre being exposed, with the main convection shot to the north and northeast of the system itself. Looking at the prospects going forward here, then looking at the ECMWF, this is the period between Monday the 16th, Monday the 23rd. You can see the system that is probably Gordon, I would imagine, seen to basically get pushed northwards here into the open North Atlantic and dissipate. We've got that feature here, we've got this probability here of this development of the southeast coast of the United States, and we've got an increased chance here over the far west Pacific. The Madden-Julian Oscillation is in a favourable position at the moment here over the West Pacific to generate some tropical cyclone activity. Then as we move to the period between Monday the 23rd of September, Monday the 30th of September here, we're increasing the chance of probability, some development possibly seen by the ECMWF between Cabo Verde towards the Lesser Antilles, the north side of the Lesser Antilles. There's that threat off the southeast coast. We've got a few other areas of increased probability between the same time frame also. Then as we move forward here, you're starting to get a greater increase in probability of tropical cyclone activity as we move into the first week of October. So we'll keep our eyes on that. And we've also got some probabilities in the West Pacific as well. So that is that. But why would we likely see an increased chance of tropical cyclone activity in the Atlantic? One of the reasons for that would be the MJO. It is drifting out of the maritime continent into the far western Pacific, but it is expected by the ECMWF to rotate through phases 7, 8, and 1, which means that the enhanced area of convection would cross the Pacific and into the Atlantic basin, and therefore we would expect to see the Atlantic waken up a little bit at least as we go through. You can see it in the ECM probabilities that we are going to increase the chance of development, and with the MJO in the day 1 through 5 in phase 6, then the 5 to 10 we've got it moving into phase 7, and then as we move into phases 8 and 1, that would be the time frame kind of day 15 through 20. So the ECMWF is expecting this rotation into the more favourable phases, and therefore you would expect to see something trying to become a little bit more active. We'll maybe see a few named storms in the period between now and the middle of October. Looking at the GFS mean 500 millibar geopotential heights over the next 5 days, and we've got this area of subsidence, 591 thicknesses here, and heights over the northern portion of the Leeward Islands here. So that's that feature that has a cross at it, but a 0% chance both in the 48-hour time frame and the 7-day time frame. But it looks as if we don't have a particularly favourable environment. Sheer, drier, but also we've got quite a lot of subsidence overhead as well, which means that we don't have a great opportunity for anything development from this. We've got some low heights across the southern and off the southeastern United States with a strong block. This is, as Joe Bastardi of Weatherbell would always say, a ridge over troubled waters type situation here with a block to the north. If we did incidentally have anything lurking to the southeast of the United States here, we've got this strong area of high pressure at the moment that would essentially pull it towards the USA. But thankfully, we have not anything really major to write home about apart from this threat off the southeast coast that will linger through the weekend and into the early and middle portions of next week. But there's nothing ominous going to develop. Even if that feature off the southeast coast does develop, it's not going to become a Cat 5 hurricane by any stretch. You notice here that we've got two areas of strong high pressure, one over Canada, one over the western side of Europe here, with a weakness in between. Therefore, we've got Gordon, obviously, over the central Atlantic, but it looks as if it's going to get pulled into this weakness between the two twin areas of high pressure to the north. So it looks as if there's no real threat going forward. As we play through this loop here, these are 5-day increments. You can see here still quite strong high pressure well displaced to the north here. This would be a very favourable pattern if we had systems to speak about, but there is very small features to talk about. The environment isn't overly conducive, but you know, if you had systems to speak about, lack of dry air, lack of shear, this would certainly be a pattern that would act like a magnet for the southeast portion of the United States going forward here. So thankfully the environment and the systems themselves are not there, but certainly this would be a very favourable pattern if we did have the features to speak about. Looking at the let me just see here. Let's look at the vort and wind probabilities here. We've got some cyclonic turning. Not an awful lot to speak about, if you notice here. Let me go back to the here and now. It would actually help. So there we go with Francine moving in. There's the development of Gordon here. The strongest area of high pressure is actually near the Azores as opposed to the Bermuda side of the Atlantic here. And as we play through, this is off the GFS ensemble, by the way. You notice here that we have got this large envelope of lower heights here, thunderstorm activity, quite messy conditions seen by the model during the course of today, 14th of September. And as you notice here that we strengthen the area of high pressure, very autumnal-like area of high pressure over eastern Canada, the northeastern United States. We've got this feature underneath here, but it's there's nothing organized, there's nothing tightly wound or compact here. It's all very open, and that is a good sign if obviously we're not wanting to see anything developing here. And we'll play all the way through the GFS loop. There is nothing really to speak about in the next couple of weeks here, which is clearly good news. So quite a remarkable situation, really, if you think about it. You know, at this time of the year, we've just passed the climatological peak of the hurricane season, and there is nothing particularly ominous threatening the Atlantic Basin, the Caribbean, the Gulf of Mexico, or the United States over the next couple of weeks here. We've got the feature that we'll keep an eye on over the next week or so off the southeast coast. We've got Gordon. That's going to be no threat to anywhere in the open Atlantic. We've got the feature to the north of the Leeward Islands. It looks as if that's not going to do anything either, apart from bring an afternoon downpour to some of the islands of the northeast Caribbean. So yeah, looks as if things remain reasonably quiet at the moment. I'll check back in. Probably won't be until next Saturday, because I don't think there's going to be much to speak about unless that feature off the southeast coast happens to develop over the next few days. There probably won't be a tropical outlook until next week. Do join me tomorrow afternoon, 4 p.m. for the live stream, and do continue to check out the rest of the content. Like and subscribe, and I'll see you tomorrow, all may and well, at 4 p.m. with the live stream. Enjoy the rest of your Saturday. Bye for now.